Hello, and welcome to another installment of my reading of Boston Accent. Um, Boston Accent is available on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle. And I believe this is part 11. Part 11, but it's like still like chapter 5. Chapter 5 is a long freaking chapter. And a reminder, this book is filled up to here with adult subject matter. Okay. All right. Where were we? The night I wrecked my mom's car, I regained consciousness briefly on the way to the hospital and then again in the ER. I woke to a doctor questioning me about a piece of metal in my head that was showing up on x-ray. He says, "I can't find a wound, but there is something there." Even as drunk as I am with a head injury, I know what he's looking for. As I reach behind me and pull off the hair tie I have him on my ponytail, I hold it up to him and say, "Is this what you're looking for?" The doctor takes the hair tie and holds it up to verify there is a metal clip on it and looks at the nurse, who is grinning. I tell the doctor, "You're not doing much for my confidence so far," and then I pass out again. The next time I come around, I'm at the nurse's station, and a nurse is telling me I have to stay awake because of my head injury. I realize my head is throbbing, and when I reach up to touch it, I find I am heavily bandaged. The nurse tells me not to touch it, that the doctor has just stitched me up, and I ask, "How many?" The nurse says, 26, and adds, "You almost lost the top of your head." All of a sudden, I remember Lisa, and I sit up quickly and ask, "Where's Lisa? Is she okay?" The nurse says I was alone in the car and has me lie back down. I'm confused now, and I lie there trying to remember what happened. I then remember I took Lisa home before the crash, and I relax and start to fall asleep until the nurse shakes me awake again. That went on all night. All I wanted to do was sleep, and the nurse kept me awake. As the sun started to come up, I was wheeled into my room at the far end of the ward. The room housed 8 beds, and all are occupied. As soon as the nurse leaves, my mother walks in the room and asks me how I'm feeling. I tell her I'm fine, but how did the car make out? She tells me it was towed from the scene and she is going to look at it tomorrow morning. She stays for about an hour and then leaves, telling me she'll be back later with my brother and sister. I manage to get some sleep, and when I wake, I realize I have to use the toilet. My knees are banged up really bad from hitting the underside of the dash on impact, and I can't move my legs. I call for a nurse to help me to the bathroom, and she hands me a plastic urinal. I tell her I have to do more than that, and she offers me a bedpan, which I refuse. I explain to her that I had to use a bedpan for almost 3 months when I was hit by a car, and I'm not using one today. The nurse starts to argue with me and tells me to just get on the pan, and I tell her, "No, I'm not using it." She leaves the pan on my nightstand and leaves the room, muttering under her breath. I throw the top sheet off me, revealing my bruised and battered legs. They won't move on their own, so I pick them up one at a time and hold them in the air. It hurts like hell. I'm trying to be quiet, but the pain is getting the better of me. I have not received any pain meds up to this point because of my head injury, and I'm feeling the full effect of my injuries. I begin breathing through my mouth like I'm giving birth, all the while lifting and dropping my legs, when I hear, "Dude, what are you doing?" I look up, and the other 7 kids in the room are staring at me. I tell them I have to move my legs so I can get out of the bed. I do this for an hour, until I can swing my legs over the side of the bed. Then I slowly stand up and test my knees to see if they will support my weight. Luckily, at the age of 17, I was still a beanpole and only had 165 pounds on my 6-foot frame. I stood hanging onto the bed until I felt confident enough to take a step towards the bathroom. All the kids are still watching, and one of the older kids says, "Don't do it," while one of the younger kids starts crying. I took my first step, and the pain shot through my knee so bad, I swear I felt it in my teeth. I just kept telling myself, keep moving, and whatever you do, don't fall. The bathroom was right outside our room, and thankfully it was unoccupied. While I was on the toilet, several of my buddies showed up, and they were waiting for me when I returned. One of them had brought me a beer, and I shoved the bedpan off the nightstand to make room for the beer. The bedpan hit the floor with a crash, and the nurse that had stormed out of the room came charging back in. She saw the pan on the floor and the beer on the nightstand, and she glares at my friends. She picks up the bedpan and reaches for the beer, but I grab it first. She says, "Don't you drink that. You have a concussion." And I tell her it's for later, as I put it in my nightstand drawer. She then storms out of the room, taking the bedpan with her. Everyone in the room starts laughing, including the kids in the other beds. While the laughter continues, my mom, brother, and sister enter the room. The laughing stops as my friends get real uncomfortable and announce they have to leave. What's to be uncomfortable about? I only wrecked her car. Once my friends are gone, my mom says she swung by the tow yard on the way home to see the car. I won't get the official word from the insurance appraiser until tomorrow, but the guy at the yard says the car is totaled, and I agree, she says with a frown on her face. The pole you hit came right through the center of the car and almost split it in half. The reason your legs are so bad is because the pole drove the engine forward into the passenger compartment. She says, seemingly trying to make some point here. In addition to this latest update, she tells me a portion of my bloody scalp is plastered to the top of the windshield where I hit. The whole time she's talking, no one else in the room is saying a word, including my brother and sister, who are clearly horrified. 1 month later, my mom received an itemized bill for the telephone pole and the cost to install a new one and attach a transformer. I thought she was going to shove the bill down my throat. I would have to keep a low profile for a long time. On my last day of school as a senior, I accepted an invitation from one of my rifle team members to go cruising in his MG Midget. My friend was Bryce Cotwell, and to this day, he is one of the most insane persons I have ever met. At the club, he was hands down the best shooter on our team. He consistently placed first in our matches. When he didn't do well, he would get very emotional to the point of tears and often become violent. The other one that would deal with him during an outburst was our coach Earl. Bryce, like me, had grown up without a father, and Earl had a lot of patience with him. One day Bryce pushed his luck with Earl when he showed up at the club with a homemade zip gun. Bryce had made a short 4-inch barrel on a lathe in the metal shop and screwed it onto the action of a rifle. It looked like a silencer, without the rest of the gun. Bryce would unscrew it and drop a .22 shell into the action and then screw the barrel back on. It didn't have a trigger. You just pulled back on the firing pin, which was spring-loaded, and release. The bullet would come out of the barrel end over end because there was no proper rifling inside the barrel, no lands or grooves. It would make a nasty hole in anything it hit. It was deadly, and it was illegal. You could hide it in the palm of your hand, and no one would know you had it until it was too late. Bryce and I walk around the corner of the gun club, and he fires it into a tree. We're checking out the damage when Earl comes up behind us and asks Bryce to hand over the gun. Earl wasn't expecting to see what Bryce hands him and goes off on him. I'd never seen Earl as mad as he was at that moment, and I never saw him that mad again. After inspecting the gun, Earl holds onto it until the end of the day and then returns it to Bryce, telling him to throw it away. I doubt he did. Now it's the last day of school for seniors, and Bryce and I are in his MG in the school lot. Bryce starts up the car, which is maybe twice the size of a two-passenger go-kart, and he gives me this grin that makes me nervous. The next thing I know, we are driving up on the sidewalk via the wheelchair ramp and headed towards the main entrance. Kids are jumping out of the way, and Bryce is laughing like a lunatic. He gets to the end of the sidewalk, throws the car in reverse, and heads back the way we came. I ask him, "What the hell are you doing?" He says, "I don't want to tear my exhaust off," as we head back to the ramp. I realize there are a lot of people watching, and I try to hide my face. This is the last thing I need to get banished from my own graduation. The summer in between graduation and college, I started running with a wide variety of friends I met at parties and at work. I was working during the day at an electronics plant on an assembly line, and at night I was an usher parking attendant at a local movie theater. It was at the theater that I became close friends with an Irishman named Sean O'Murphy, who had graduated the year before me and lived in Marlin. Sean was the stereotypical heavy drinker and hell-raising Irishman, and we hit it off the first night when I was just shy of my 18th birthday and he was 20. I had yet to buy a car, and Sean started giving me rides back and forth to work. It was the ride home that was the problem, as Sean was in the habit of keeping a cooler full of Rolling Rock on ice at all times in his trunk. There were many places to sit and drink without anyone bothering us, and after drinking for 2 hours, Sean would drop me off in my driveway. I would have to stumble in trying to not to wake up the house. I introduced some of my friends to Sean, and at first I couldn't stand him, as he came off as a little too extroverted for their taste. These friends were a little conservative, a little snotty, and actually they could be quite boring. I was attracted to people that weren't afraid to be themselves, and they tended to be colorful characters and very funny. I had problems with friends accepting Phil as well. I had known him since grade school. The thing with Phil and me is that we just didn't give a shit what people thought about us. We weren't placed on this earth to win people over. When Jake had started dating Gretchen, I had stopped hanging around with him and was spending more time with Phil. One day at school, Jake approached me and said he had heard I had been hanging around with Phil, and that wasn't a good reflection on either one of us. I said, "Why is that?" And he said, "Because he's a queer." So I went on to tell him no one was going to tell me who I could and couldn't hang around with. He shoved me, and I shoved him back, and he bounced off a large plate glass window that by some miracle didn't break. One of the three vice principals in the school had been watching the whole thing, and when Jake hit the glass, he jumped in and stopped it. We both ended up in the principal's office, and we were suspended for fighting. We were told not to show up at school the next day and received letters to bring home to our parents. Neither of our parents batted an eye at the letters. They knew we were friends and basically said, "Save your disagreements for when you're not at school." Both sets of parents also played the Gretchen card, but we denied it had anything to do with her. In the back of our minds, it had everything to do with her. Okay, we're going to call it quits for this reading. And we'll pick it up again where we left off. I'll make a little notation where that is. And once again, we're reading Boston Accent. I'm Mark Mattioli, and I'll see you next time. Ciao.